What happens when trust shatters in the gilded world of wealth and power? Imagine a love story that begins as a fairy tale union between two prestigious families, only to unravel into a web of betrayal, greed, and revenge. Behind the glittering facade of success lies a chilling conspiracy, one that threatens to destroy lives, legacies, and even innocence itself. As secrets unfold and alliances crumble, a woman once betrayed rises from the ashes with a plan so bold it could either redeem her or consume her entirely. Will she reclaim what was stolen, or will the cost of vengeance be too great to bear? This is a tale of love lost, justice sought, and resilience reborn, where nothing is as it seems. In the opulent world of America's upper class, where legacies are forged not just through wealth but through reputation and influence, two prominent families came together in a marriage that seemed destined to redefine their shared future. The Whitmores, renowned for their centuries-old shipping empire, and the Harringtons, celebrated for their groundbreaking innovations in technology, were pillars of power in their respective industries. Their union was more than a joining of hands. It was a merger of ambition, tradition, and vision, an alliance designed to solidify their dominance in the market while preserving their esteemed names. The engagement between Eleanor Harrington and Charles Whitmore was announced with great fanfare at an exclusive gala held in Manhattan's most prestigious ballroom. Guests included titans of industry, political figures, and cultural icons, all gathered to witness the beginning of what many called the partnership of the century. Eleanor, with her poised elegance and sharp intellect, represented the progressive spirit of the Harrington family. A graduate of Harvard Business School, she had already made waves in the tech sector by spearheading several successful ventures under her father's company banner. Charles, on the other hand, exuded old-world charm tempered by modern pragmatism. As the heir to the Whitmore fortune, he brought a depth of experience in logistics and global trade, complemented by his astute ability to navigate complex business landscapes. From the moment they met at a charity event hosted by mutual acquaintances, there was an undeniable spark between them. Their conversations flowed effortlessly, blending discussions of business strategy with heartfelt reflections on personal aspirations. It became clear to both sets of parents that this connection transcended mere convenience. It was a genuine bond rooted in mutual respect and admiration. The couple's love story unfolded naturally, nurtured by shared values and ambitions. They supported each other's dreams without hesitation, whether it was Eleanor mentoring young women entrepreneurs or Charles advocating for sustainable practices within the shipping industry. Their relationship blossomed into something rare, a partnership built on trust, equality, and unwavering loyalty. As plans for their wedding took shape, excitement rippled through both families. The ceremony, held on the sprawling grounds of the Whitmore estate overlooking Long Island Sound, was nothing short of breathtaking. Hundreds of guests marveled at the meticulous attention to detail, from the cascading floral arrangements to the orchestra performing classical compositions specially commissioned for the occasion. When Charles placed the diamond ring on Eleanor's finger during the vows, there wasn't a dry eye in sight. It was a moment that encapsulated everything their families stood for: unity, prosperity, and boundless potential. But beyond the pomp and circumstance lay a deeper truth. This marriage was not merely about combining fortunes. It was about forging a legacy. Both families envisioned a future where their combined strengths would create opportunities previously unimaginable. For Eleanor and Charles, this meant stepping into leadership roles within their merged enterprises, leveraging their individual talents to drive innovation and growth. Together, they symbolized hope, a new generation ready to lead with integrity and purpose. And so, as the newlyweds danced under a canopy of twinkling lights, surrounded by loved ones and well-wishers, it felt as though anything was possible. Little did they know, however, that the road ahead would test every ounce of strength, resilience, and courage they possessed. In the months following their wedding, Eleanor and Charles wasted no time in proving that their union was more than a ceremonial milestone. It was a catalyst for unprecedented success. Drawing upon their complementary strengths, they transformed the family businesses into juggernauts that commanded respect across industries. Eleanor's strategic acumen and forward-thinking approach found fertile ground in the shipping empire, where she implemented cutting-edge technologies to streamline operations and reduce environmental impact. Her introduction of AI-driven logistics systems revolutionized supply chain management, earning accolades from competitors and clients alike. Meanwhile, Charles seamlessly integrated himself into the Harrington tech portfolio, using his deep understanding of international markets to expand their reach into untapped regions. Under their leadership, profits soared, partnerships flourished, and the brands became synonymous with innovation and reliability. Their professional achievements mirrored the harmony of their personal lives. Eleanor and Charles were a study in balance. His calm demeanor offsetting her fiery determination, her creative instincts fueling his methodical execution. They thrived on collaboration, often spending late nights brainstorming ideas over coffee in their home office, surrounded by whiteboards filled with sketches and equations. Their colleagues admired how they challenged each other constructively, pushing boundaries without ever losing sight of their shared goals. This synergy extended beyond the boardroom. At social events, they moved effortlessly among crowds, radiating confidence and charm. Whether hosting industry leaders at their penthouse or attending galas, they embodied the epitome of a modern power couple, graceful yet formidable, united in purpose. The admiration they garnered was universal, spanning generations and sectors. Industry peers lauded them as trailblazers who understood the importance of adaptability in an ever-evolving marketplace. Family members marveled at how seamlessly they balanced tradition with progress, ensuring that the values instilled by their ancestors remained intact while embracing contemporary practices. Even employees spoke of their inspiring leadership style, one that prioritized mentorship, transparency, and inclusivity. Stories circulated about how Eleanor personally mentored young professionals, encouraging them to pursue bold ideas, and how Charles championed employee wellness initiatives, creating a culture of care within their organizations. Social circles buzzed with tales of their generosity and grace. At charity auctions, they consistently outbid others not for prestige but because they genuinely believed in the causes they supported. From funding scholarships for underprivileged students to spearheading environmental conservation projects, their philanthropy reflected a deep commitment to giving back. Friends and acquaintances often remarked on their humility despite their immense success, noting how they never allowed accolades to overshadow their humanity. Even amidst their whirlwind schedules, Eleanor and Charles carved out moments to nurture their relationship. Weekends were reserved for quiet escapes to their countryside retreat, where they cooked meals together, took long walks, and indulged in hobbies that bonded them further. These interludes served as reminders of why they had embarked on this journey together, to build not only a thriving enterprise but also a life rich in love, laughter, and shared dreams. Their happiness was palpable, infectious even, leaving no doubt in anyone's mind that theirs was a partnership destined to endure. As Eleanor entered her second trimester, the weight of her growing responsibilities began to shift in ways neither she nor Charles had anticipated. The early days of pregnancy brought a mix of exhilaration and fatigue, but as the weeks passed, the demands of her body and the needs of their unborn child increasingly required her full attention. Balancing the rigors of running two high-profile businesses with the delicate task of nurturing new life proved unsustainable. After consulting with her doctor and reflecting deeply on her priorities, Eleanor made the difficult decision to step back from her active role in the family enterprises. She entrusted Charles with the reins, confident in his abilities and their shared vision for the future. At first, the transition appeared seamless. Charles embraced his expanded responsibilities with characteristic dedication, immersing himself in the intricacies of both the shipping and tech sectors. He assured Eleanor that her absence would be temporary, promising to maintain the momentum they had built together. To assist him, he hired a personal secretary, a move initially met with approval. The position required someone sharp, organized, and capable of navigating the complexities of their dual operations. Enter Victoria Langley, a strikingly beautiful woman whose resume boasted years of experience in executive support and corporate strategy. With her poised demeanor and razor-sharp intellect, Victoria quickly established herself as indispensable to Charles's daily routine. Victoria's arrival marked the beginning of subtle changes within their household and business dynamics. Initially, Eleanor dismissed any unease she felt about the arrangement, attributing it to hormones and the natural anxieties of impending motherhood. Yet as the weeks turned into months, patterns emerged that gnawed at the edges of her peace of mind. Charles began returning home later than usual, his once frequent updates about work dwindling to perfunctory summaries over hurried dinners. Phone calls interrupted family time, and weekend outings became rarer. When questioned, he brushed off her concerns with assurances that the workload was simply heavier now that he was managing everything alone. Despite these signs, Eleanor clung to the belief that her husband's devotion remained unwavering. She told herself that his long hours were driven by necessity rather than neglect, convincing herself that too much work was putting pressure on him. To compensate, she redoubled her efforts to create a warm and welcoming environment at home, preparing his favorite meals and planning cozy evenings together whenever his schedule allowed. Pregnancy had heightened her emotions, making her more sensitive to perceived slights, but she resolved to remain patient and supportive, trusting that this phase would pass once their child arrived. What Eleanor failed to notice, or perhaps chose not to acknowledge, was the growing intimacy between Charles and Victoria. In the boardroom, their interactions were professional yet charged with an unspoken energy. Outside of work, their conversations lingered longer than necessary, their laughter carrying through closed doors. Colleagues whispered about their chemistry, noting how Victoria seemed to anticipate Charles's every need before he voiced it. While Eleanor continued to focus on preparing for their baby's arrival, oblivious to the undercurrents swirling around her, Charles and Victoria grew closer, their bond evolving into something far beyond the confines of a professional relationship. For Eleanor, this period of withdrawal from the business world was bittersweet. On one hand, she cherished the opportunity to prioritize her health and prepare for the joys of parenthood. On the other, she couldn't shake the feeling that something vital was slipping away, something intangible yet profoundly important. Her faith in Charles kept her grounded, but beneath the surface, seeds of doubt began to take root. Unbeknownst to her, the foundation of their marriage was quietly cracking, paving the way for a storm she could scarcely imagine. ###shadows of betrayal. Eleanor's suspicions began as faint whispers, fleeting thoughts that she tried to dismiss but couldn't entirely silence. The late-night phone calls Charles received grew more frequent, his voice low and urgent when he answered them outside their bedroom door. His excuses varied. He was dealing with a client emergency, coordinating logistics across time zones, or addressing an unexpected issue, but something about his tone unsettled her. There was a tension in his words, a guardedness that hadn't been there before. Still, Eleanor hesitated to confront him outright. Instead, she found herself watching, listening, and piecing together fragments of behavior that no longer aligned with the man she thought she knew. It started with small things, details that might have gone unnoticed if not for her heightened sensitivity during pregnancy. Charles's cologne smelled stronger some mornings, as though he'd reapplied it after showering. His shirts sometimes carried faint traces of perfume, unfamiliar and floral, lingering just enough to catch her attention. Then there were the receipts she discovered tucked into his wallet, expensive restaurant bills from places she didn't recognize, dates scribbled hastily on the backs of meeting agendas. Each discovery added another layer of unease, yet she struggled to reconcile these anomalies with the image of the devoted husband who had pledged his love to her under a canopy of stars. Determined to uncover the truth without alarming Charles prematurely, Eleanor decided to act discreetly. She hired a private investigator recommended by a trusted friend, instructing them to follow Charles during his increasingly frequent business trips and late-night outings. The investigator's initial reports confirmed her worst fears. Photographs captured Charles dining with Victoria at upscale restaurants, their body language intimate and relaxed. In one image, Victoria leaned toward him, her hand resting lightly on his arm as they laughed over candlelight. Another showed them walking side by side through a hotel lobby, their shoulders brushing in a way that suggested familiarity far beyond professional courtesy. The evidence mounted steadily, each piece chipping away at Eleanor's resolve to believe in Charles's innocence. Surveillance footage revealed clandestine meetings in secluded corners of office buildings, prolonged conversations in parked cars, and hushed exchanges outside hotels. Text messages intercepted from Victoria's phone painted an even clearer picture. Flirtatious banter laced with innuendo, plans for rendezvous carefully disguised as work-related errands, and declarations of affection that left little room for interpretation. "You're my everything," read one message sent late at night. "We'll make this work, no matter what." Yet even as the proof accumulated, Eleanor wrestled with conflicting emotions. Part of her wanted to confront Charles immediately, to demand answers and force him to explain the betrayal unfolding before her eyes. But another part, the rational, hopeful side, clung to denial. Perhaps there was a reasonable explanation, she reasoned. Maybe Victoria was manipulating him, exploiting his stress and workload to insinuate herself into his life. Eleanor reminded herself of their history together, recalling moments when Charles had stood by her unwaveringly. Could their entire marriage truly be a lie? To cope, Eleanor adopted a routine of self-reassurance. Every morning, she repeated affirmations aloud while dressing for the day. He loves me. He wouldn't do this. She immersed herself in preparations for their baby's arrival, decorating the nursery with soft pastels and meticulously organizing tiny outfits. Cooking elaborate meals became a form of therapy, filling their home with comforting aromas that masked the tension simmering beneath the surface. When Charles returned home, she greeted him warmly, suppressing her doubts and focusing on maintaining the illusion of normalcy. But the cracks in her composure widened with each passing week. Nights spent lying awake beside him, listening to his steady breathing, felt like torture. She replayed conversations in her mind, searching for clues she might have missed. Did his distracted gaze during dinner hint at guilt? Was his reluctance to discuss certain projects a deliberate attempt to hide something? The uncertainty gnawed at her, eroding her confidence and planting seeds of resentment. Despite her best efforts to stay composed, moments of vulnerability crept in. Tears shed silently in the shower, sharp retorts fueled by frustration, and sleepless nights spent staring at the ceiling. Through it all, Eleanor maintained a fragile equilibrium, telling herself that too much work was putting pressure on Charles. She convinced herself that his distance was temporary, a byproduct of stress rather than malice. Yet deep down, the truth loomed larger with each passing day. The photographs, the messages, the stolen glances, they painted a narrative she couldn't ignore forever. And as her due date approached, bringing with it the promise of new life, Eleanor faced a harsh reality. The man she loved, the partner she trusted implicitly, was unraveling the very foundation of their life together. As Eleanor grappled with her suspicions, Charles and Victoria's relationship spiraled into dangerous territory. What had begun as flirtation and shared ambition evolved into a calculated conspiracy, one that threatened to destroy everything Eleanor held dear. Unbeknownst to her, the two had devised a sinister plan to seize control of the Whitmore-Harrington empire, eliminating Eleanor as an obstacle in their path. Their scheme was born out of greed and opportunism, cloaked in layers of deception designed to shield them from suspicion until it was too late. Charles's growing indifference toward Eleanor wasn't merely a symptom of infidelity. It was a strategic maneuver to isolate her emotionally and financially. He began subtly distancing himself from family matters, citing increased responsibilities at work as justification for his absence. Meetings stretched into evenings, business trips extended into weekends, and his demeanor shifted from loving to detached. To outsiders, it appeared as though he was overwhelmed by the pressures of managing both enterprises alone. In truth, he was laying the groundwork for a hostile takeover, systematically undermining Eleanor's influence within the companies while cultivating alliances with key stakeholders who owed him favors. Victoria played an equally pivotal role in their plot. Using her position as Charles's secretary, she gained access to sensitive financial records, legal documents, and internal communications. Her meticulous research uncovered vulnerabilities in the family trusts and loopholes in the corporate structure that could be exploited. She drafted memos outlining strategies to siphon funds, redirect assets, and manipulate contracts, all under the guise of optimizing efficiency. Her ambition knew no bounds, and she pushed Charles to accelerate their timeline, reminding him of the vast wealth they would amass once Eleanor was out of the picture. The culmination of their plan took shape during Eleanor's 8th month of pregnancy, a time when her physical limitations made her especially vulnerable. Charles proposed a romantic getaway to a secluded coastal resort, ostensibly to help her relax before the baby's arrival. Eleanor, desperate to reconnect with her husband and reassure herself of his love, agreed without hesitation. What she didn't know was that the trip was a trap, orchestrated with chilling precision. On the night of their arrival, Charles excused himself from dinner to take a call, leaving Eleanor alone on the terrace overlooking the ocean. As she sipped her wine and watched the waves crash against jagged rocks below, a courier delivered a package to her suite. Inside was a dossier containing all the evidence she had secretly commissioned: the photographs of Charles and Victoria, transcripts of their illicit exchanges, and detailed accounts of their financial machinations. Among the documents was a chilling revelation. Victoria had booked a private boat tour for the following morning, allegedly to celebrate Eleanor's last vacation before motherhood. However, the itinerary included a detour to treacherous waters notorious for accidents. The final page bore a handwritten note from Charles, addressed to Victoria. Asterisk. Make sure it looks like an accident. No loose ends. Asterisk. Eleanor's world shattered as she absorbed the enormity of their betrayal. The man she had trusted with her heart, the father of her unborn child, had conspired to murder her. Her hands trembled as she flipped through the pages, each word confirming her worst fears. The pain of his betrayal cut deeper than any knife, leaving her breathless and hollow. For a moment, she considered confronting him directly, demanding answers and forcing him to face the consequences of his actions. But survival instincts kicked in, overriding her grief and anger. Realizing she couldn't fight back openly without risking her life, Eleanor devised a counterplan. If Charles wanted her dead, she would give him exactly what he desired: a staged disappearance. She meticulously arranged for allies to assist her, including the private investigator who had uncovered the affair. Together, they crafted a scenario that would convince Charles she had perished in a tragic boating accident, sparing her from immediate danger while buying her time to gather irrefutable evidence against him. The next morning, Eleanor boarded the chartered yacht as planned, her heart pounding with a mixture of fear and resolve. She wore a hidden GPS tracker beneath her clothing and carried a waterproof bag containing critical documents. As the boat ventured farther from shore, she enacted the final stage of her plan. During a simulated emergency, she slipped into the water unnoticed, allowing the current to carry her away from the vessel. The crew reported her missing shortly thereafter, triggering a search and rescue operation that ultimately yielded no trace of her body. Unbeknownst to everyone except her closest confidants, Eleanor survived the ordeal, but not unscathed. The trauma of escaping death left her physically weakened and emotionally scarred. Worse still, complications from the escape caused her to miscarry, robbing her of the child she had dreamed of raising. When Eleanor awoke in the sterile confines of the hospital room, the first thing she registered was the dull ache radiating through her abdomen. The second was the crushing emptiness that settled over her like a suffocating shroud. Machines beeped rhythmically beside her bed, monitors displaying numbers she barely comprehended, but none of it mattered compared to the void inside her. Her hand instinctively moved to rest on her stomach, only to find it flat and foreign. The realization hit her with the force of a tidal wave. Her baby was gone. The child she had carried for 8 months, the one she had whispered hopes and dreams to in the quiet hours of the night, had been taken from her, not by fate, but by cruelty and betrayal. Tears streamed down her face as memories flooded back in fragmented flashes. The icy water closing over her head, the desperation clawing at her chest as she fought to stay afloat, the unbearable cramps that seized her body during her escape, warning her of what was to come. And then the unbearable silence, the absence of the fluttering kicks and movements that had once reassured her of life growing within her. Now there was nothing, only emptiness. Her throat tightened as sobs racked her body, Each gasp for air a reminder of the life she had lost and the man who had orchestrated it. Pain coursed through every fiber of her being, both physical and emotional. Doctors had explained that the stress and trauma of her ordeal had triggered complications, leading to the miscarriage. But explanations offered no solace. The loss wasn't just biological. It was personal. She mourned the tiny heartbeat she would never hear, the first cry she would never hold close, the milestones she would never witness. Guilt gnawed at her, twisting the knife deeper. Had she acted too recklessly? Could she have done more to protect her child? Questions swirled in her mind, unanswered and unanswerable, compounding her anguish. And then there was the hatred, a seething, consuming fire that burned hotter with each passing moment. Hatred for Charles, whose ambition had blinded him to humanity. Hatred for Victoria, whose greed had reduced her to collateral damage. Hatred for herself, for trusting them, for failing to see the signs earlier. This hatred was different from the grief. It sharpened her senses, fueled her resolve, and gave her something to cling to amidst the wreckage of her life. It became the anchor that tethered her to reality when despair threatened to pull her under. As nurses came and went, offering condolences and assurances they couldn't possibly mean, Eleanor retreated inward, building walls around herself. She refused visitors, ignored phone calls, and stared blankly at the ceiling for hours on end. The world outside felt distant, irrelevant. All that mattered was the vow she made to herself in those dark, silent moments. She would survive this, not just for herself, but for the child she had lost. She owed it to them to rise from the ashes, stronger and more determined than ever before. Recovery was slow and painful, both physically and mentally. Every movement felt like a battle, every breath a reminder of what she had endured. Yet with each small victory, a step walked without assistance, a meal eaten without nausea, she reclaimed a piece of herself. Her grief remained a constant companion, but it no longer controlled her. Instead, it transformed into fuel, igniting a fierce determination to rebuild her life and exact justice on those who had wronged her. By the time she was discharged from the hospital, Eleanor was no longer the woman who had stepped onto that boat. The betrayal had stripped away her naivety, replacing it with steely resolve. The loss of her child had shattered her heart, but it had also forged an unbreakable will. She emerged from the shadows of her tragedy with a singular purpose: to expose the truth, reclaim what was rightfully hers, and ensure that Charles and Victoria paid for their crimes. There would be no forgiveness, no mercy, only retribution. When news of Eleanor's supposed drowning reached Charles, he responded with a performance so convincing that even those closest to him were moved to tears. Returning home from the coastal resort, his face was gaunt, his eyes bloodshot and rimmed with dark circles. He shuffled through the door of their penthouse, his usually immaculate suit wrinkled and stained, as though he hadn't slept or changed since receiving the devastating news. His voice cracked as he recounted the details of the boating accident to concerned friends and family members, describing how he had frantically searched for Eleanor in the choppy waters, shouting her name until his throat was raw. "I should have been there," he choked out, burying his face in his hands. "I should have protected her." The public display of mourning struck a chord with everyone who witnessed it. Friends and colleagues rallied around him, offering condolences and sharing stories of Eleanor's kindness, intelligence, and grace. Social media feeds were flooded with tributes, photos of her radiant smile, and heartfelt messages expressing disbelief at the tragedy. Even strangers joined in the collective grief, drawn to the poignancy of a young life cut tragically short. Reporters clamored for interviews, eager to document the heartbreaking tale of love and loss. Charles granted a few, his voice trembling as he described Eleanor as the light of my life, and a woman who touched everyone she met. His sorrow seemed genuine, his devastation absolute. Within the family circle, Charles's behavior only deepened the impression of a man undone by grief. He insisted on organizing a memorial service fit for a queen, sparing no expense to honor Eleanor's memory. The event, held at the same estate where they had exchanged vows, was attended by hundreds of mourners. White roses adorned every surface, their fragrance heavy in the air, while a slideshow of Eleanor's happiest moments played softly in the background. Charles delivered a eulogy that left not a dry eye in the room. "She was my partner, my confidant, my soulmate," he said, his voice breaking. "Our love was a gift I didn't deserve, and now it's gone." As he stepped down from the podium, visibly shaken, several attendees rushed to embrace him, murmuring words of comfort. Behind closed doors, however, Charles's grief began to take on a darker hue. He withdrew from social obligations, claiming he needed time to process his loss. Yet those who visited him noticed subtle changes in his demeanor. Gone was the warmth and vulnerability he had displayed in public. Instead, a cold calculation seemed to seep into his interactions. He spent hours holed up in his study, poring over legal documents and financial statements, his brow furrowed in concentration. When questioned about his activities, he dismissed concerns with vague references to tying up loose ends and ensuring Eleanor's legacy is preserved. In truth, Charles saw Eleanor's disappearance as an opportunity, one he intended to exploit fully. With her presumed dead, he wasted no time consolidating control over the Whitmore-Harrington empire. He convened emergency board meetings, presenting himself as the sole remaining steward of their combined fortunes. Leveraging his newfound authority, he began restructuring key divisions, sidelining loyalists who might question his motives and promoting individuals aligned with his agenda. Victoria, ever the opportunist, positioned herself as his right hand, her influence growing exponentially as she navigated the chaos with ruthless efficiency. Meanwhile, Charles initiated legal proceedings to claim Eleanor's inheritance, arguing that her assets should be transferred to him as her surviving spouse. He cited provisions in their prenuptial agreement and family trusts, painting a picture of fiscal responsibility and continuity. Lawyers worked tirelessly to expedite the process, filing motions and securing court orders that effectively froze Eleanor's accounts until the matter could be resolved. To the outside world, this appeared to be a necessary step in managing the aftermath of such a sudden tragedy. Privately, Charles reveled in the knowledge that he was one step closer to achieving his ultimate goal: complete dominion over everything Eleanor had once cherished. The irony of his actions was lost on no one, except perhaps Charles himself. As he basked in sympathy and admiration, he failed to notice the growing unease among certain associates. Whispers circulated about the speed with which he had assumed control, the opacity of his decisions, and the conspicuous absence of any meaningful investigation into Eleanor's disappearance. Some began to wonder whether the grieving widower was truly as bereft as he appeared, or if his grief was merely a mask for something far more sinister. While Charles basked in the glow of public sympathy and plotted his next moves, Eleanor watched from afar, her presence unknown to him but her intentions crystal clear. Hidden in a safe house miles away, she meticulously assembled the arsenal she would need to dismantle the life he had so callously destroyed. The evidence against Charles and Victoria was damning, collected over months of covert surveillance and painstaking investigation. Photographs chronicling their affair, audio recordings capturing their conspiratorial whispers, and financial documents exposing their illicit transactions formed the backbone of her case. But Eleanor wanted more than just proof. She sought retribution, a reckoning that would leave no room for denial or escape. Her first strike came in the form of an anonymous tip-off to a prominent investigative journalist known for exposing corporate corruption. Alongside the dossier she had compiled, Eleanor included a handwritten note urging the reporter to dig deeper. Within days, headlines erupted across major news outlets, detailing the shocking allegations against Charles Whitmore. Photos of him and Victoria surfaced online, accompanied by transcripts of their incriminating conversations. Social media exploded with outrage as netizens dissected every detail, speculating about the extent of their betrayal. The scandal sent shockwaves through the business community, tarnishing the once sterling reputations of both the Whitmore and Harrington families. Simultaneously, Eleanor unleashed a digital blitzkrieg aimed at dismantling Charles's carefully constructed facade. Hacked emails and confidential memos were leaked to rival companies, revealing unethical practices and illegal schemes that had long been buried under layers of obfuscation. Competitors pounced on the information, filing lawsuits and launching investigations that further destabilized Charles's grip on the empire. Regulatory bodies took notice, issuing subpoenas and freezing assets tied to suspicious transactions. Overnight, the man who had prided himself on invincibility found himself entangled in a web of legal battles and public scrutiny. But Eleanor wasn't content to let the courts handle everything. She orchestrated a series of targeted strikes designed to humiliate Charles and Victoria personally. Private investigators she had retained tracked Victoria's movements, documenting her lavish lifestyle funded by embezzled money. Compromising images of her attending exclusive parties and indulging in luxury vacations were sent directly to her parents' doorstep, along with a letter outlining her role in the conspiracy. The fallout was swift and brutal. Disowned by her family and ostracized by former colleagues, Victoria's career imploded overnight. Blacklisted from the industry, she vanished from public view, reduced to a shadow of her former self. For Charles, the humiliation was equally devastating. Eleanor ensured that every aspect of his duplicity was laid bare, from his secret meetings with Victoria to his manipulative tactics in seizing control of the family businesses. Video footage surfaced showing him orchestrating the boating accident. His cold detachment evident even as he discussed ending Eleanor's life. The clip went viral, sparking widespread condemnation and cementing his status as a pariah. Friends distanced themselves, fearing association with his disgrace, while business partners severed ties, unwilling to risk collateral damage. Perhaps most satisfying for Eleanor was the collapse of Charles's attempts to claim her inheritance. Armed with irrefutable evidence of his betrayal, she filed a countersuit challenging his legitimacy as her heir. Courts froze his access to her assets pending review, leaving him scrambling to salvage what remained of his crumbling empire. Legal fees mounted, draining resources faster than he could replenish them. By the time the dust settled, Charles stood stripped of everything: wealth, power, and credibility, all thanks to the woman he had presumed dead. Throughout it all, Eleanor remained invisible, her identity shielded by layers of anonymity. Yet her satisfaction was palpable, a quiet triumph that fueled her resolve to rebuild. Watching Charles's downfall unfold from the shadows, she felt a sense of closure, not just for herself, but for the child she had lost. Justice had been served, and though it couldn't undo the past, it offered a measure of peace. With the battlefield cleared, Eleanor turned her focus inward, determined to forge a new path defined not by revenge, but by resilience. The day of reckoning arrived under a slate-gray sky, the air heavy with the weight of impending judgment. Eleanor stood outside the courthouse, her silhouette stark against the marble steps, her posture unwavering despite the storm brewing within her. She had spent months preparing for this moment, rehearsing every word, steeling herself for the confrontation that would finally strip Charles of his illusions and expose the depths of his depravity. As the crowd of reporters surged forward, cameras flashing like strobe lights, she stepped inside, her heels clicking against the polished floor with resolute certainty. Today was not just about justice, it was about closure. Inside the courtroom, the atmosphere crackled with tension. Charles sat flanked by his attorneys, his expression a mixture of defiance and unease. Gone was the polished facade he had worn so convincingly during his public displays of grief. In its place was a man cornered, his arrogance fraying at the edges. When Eleanor entered, escorted by her own legal team, his gaze flickered toward her briefly before darting away, as though unable to bear the sight of her. She took her seat across the aisle, her eyes locked on him, unyielding and piercing. The transformation in her was unmistakable. Where once there had been warmth and trust, now there was only steel. The proceedings began with formalities, but as the prosecution presented its case, the room seemed to shrink, the walls closing in on Charles. Document after document was submitted as evidence. Financial records detailing embezzlement, emails outlining the plot to eliminate Eleanor, and video footage of his chilling instructions regarding the boating accident. Each piece of evidence landed like a hammer blow, chipping away at the veneer of respectability he had cultivated for years. When the video showing his casual disregard for her life played on the courtroom monitor, gasps rippled through the gallery. Charles's face flushed crimson, his jaw tightening as he struggled to maintain composure. Then came Eleanor's testimony. Rising from her seat, she moved to the stand with measured steps, her presence commanding the attention of everyone in the room. As she recounted the events leading up to her staged disappearance, her voice remained steady, each word precise and deliberate. She described the betrayal that had shattered her trust, the pain of learning about the conspiracy to kill her, and the unfathomable grief of losing her unborn child. Her account was raw and unflinching, painting a vivid portrait of a woman who had endured unimaginable suffering yet emerged stronger for it. "I stood by him," she said, her tone cutting through the silence like a blade. "I trusted him with my life, my dreams, and our future. And this is how he repaid me, with lies, greed, and violence. He didn't just betray me. He betrayed everything we built together. He destroyed lives. Mine, our child's, and countless others whose livelihoods depended on the integrity of our businesses. But today, I'm here to ensure he faces the consequences of his actions." Charles's reaction was telling. At first, he sat rigidly, his knuckles white as he gripped the edge of the table. But as Eleanor continued, recounting the meticulous planning that had led to his exposure, his composure began to crack. His mouth gaped open in disbelief, his eyes darting between her and the mounting evidence displayed on screens around the room. For the first time, he looked not like the calculating mastermind he had pretended to be, but like a man caught in the act, stripped of all pretense. When the defense attempted to discredit her testimony, questioning her motivations and casting doubt on her version of events, Eleanor remained unshaken. She countered their arguments with facts, her responses sharp and irrefutable. "You can twist the truth all you want," she said, her gaze fixed on Charles. "But the evidence speaks for itself. You thought you could erase me, but I'm still here. And I won't stop until you pay for what you've done." The final blow came when Eleanor revealed the surveillance footage she had secretly recorded during their marriage. Conversations in which Charles had casually discussed his plans to seize control of the family empire, his dismissive remarks about her contributions, and his blatant disregard for her feelings. The recordings left no room for ambiguity, sealing his fate in the eyes of the jury and the public. As the clips played, Charles slumped in his chair, his shoulders sagging under the weight of his unraveling lies. The man who had once exuded confidence now appeared hollow, defeated. When the judge delivered the verdict, guilty on all counts, the courtroom erupted in murmurs. Charles was sentenced to prison, his assets seized, and his reputation obliterated. As he was led away in handcuffs, his head bowed, Eleanor watched without emotion. There was no triumph in seeing him fall, only a profound sense of relief. She had fought not for vengeance, but for justice, for herself, for her child, and for the legacy they had almost lost. After the trial, Eleanor addressed the media gathered outside, her voice firm and resolute. "This isn't about hate or revenge," she said. "It's about accountability. What happened to me shouldn't happen to anyone else. I hope this serves as a reminder that no one is above the law, no matter how powerful they think they are." With those words, she turned and walked away, leaving behind the chaos and stepping into a future she intended to reclaim on her own terms. In the months following Charles's conviction, Eleanor dedicated herself to rebuilding her life with a clarity and purpose that surprised even herself. The scars of her ordeal remained, both visible and invisible, but they no longer defined her. Instead, they became markers of resilience, reminders of the strength she had discovered within herself when everything else had been stripped away. Determined to honor the memory of her lost child and restore the legacy she had nearly sacrificed, she poured her energy into revitalizing the Whitmore-Harrington empire, transforming it into a beacon of innovation, integrity, and compassion. The first step in her journey was reclaiming leadership of the family businesses. With Charles's assets frozen and his influence erased, Eleanor assumed full control, guided by a renewed vision for the future. She dismantled the toxic structures that had enabled his deceit, replacing them with transparent policies and inclusive practices designed to empower employees and foster trust. Departments once mired in secrecy were restructured to encourage collaboration, while whistleblower protections were implemented to safeguard against future misconduct. Her decisive actions earned widespread acclaim, not only from within the organization but also from industry peers who hailed her as a trailblazer for ethical leadership. Under her guidance, the shipping division embraced sustainability initiatives that set new benchmarks for environmental responsibility. Eleanor spearheaded partnerships with environmental organizations to develop eco-friendly vessels and reduce carbon emissions, earning awards for corporate stewardship. Simultaneously, she revitalized the Harrington Tech portfolio by investing in groundbreaking startups focused on artificial intelligence, renewable energy, and healthcare solutions. These ventures not only generated substantial returns but also positioned the company at the forefront of technological advancement, reaffirming its status as an industry leader. Beyond business, Eleanor prioritized giving back to the community, channeling her personal pain into meaningful action. She established a foundation in memory of her unborn child, dedicated to supporting women and families affected by pregnancy loss and infant mortality. The initiative provided resources for mental health counseling, financial assistance for medical expenses, and advocacy for policies that improved maternal care. Through this work, Eleanor found solace in helping others navigate the grief she understood all too well. Her efforts resonated deeply with people across the country, sparking conversations about topics often shrouded in silence and stigma. Her philanthropic endeavors extended beyond her foundation. Eleanor became a vocal advocate for gender equality in the workplace, using her platform to challenge systemic barriers faced by women in leadership roles. She launched mentorship programs aimed at nurturing young female entrepreneurs, offering them access to funding, networking opportunities, and guidance from seasoned professionals. At conferences and panel discussions, she shared her story, not as a tale of victimhood, but as a testament to perseverance and empowerment. Her authenticity inspired countless individuals, particularly women who saw in her a reflection of their own struggles and aspirations. As her influence grew, so did her resolve to redefine success on her terms. Eleanor stepped away from the relentless pursuit of profit that had once consumed her life, instead focusing on creating lasting impact. She embraced a more balanced lifestyle, prioritizing self-care and spending time with loved ones who had stood by her during her darkest days. Weekly yoga sessions, quiet mornings spent journaling, and long walks along the beach became integral parts of her routine, grounding her in gratitude and mindfulness. These practices allowed her to approach challenges with renewed perspective and patience, qualities she carried into both her professional and personal life. Eleanor also reconnected with passions she had set aside during her marriage: painting, writing, and exploring new cultures through travel. She began documenting her experiences in a memoir, weaving together reflections on love, betrayal, resilience, and redemption. The book was not just a chronicle of her past. It was a call to action for anyone facing adversity, urging readers to find strength in vulnerability and purpose in pain. When it was published, the memoir quickly climbed bestseller lists, praised for its honesty and wisdom. Readers wrote letters thanking her for sharing her journey, many confessing how her words had helped them confront their own hardships. Amid these accomplishments, Eleanor remained grounded by surrounding herself with a close-knit circle of trusted friends, family, and advisors. Their unwavering support reminded her that she was never truly alone, even when the weight of her responsibilities felt overwhelming. She leaned on them during moments of doubt, drawing courage from their belief in her abilities. In turn, she became a source of inspiration for those around her, embodying grace under pressure and leading by example. Professionally, Eleanor's transformation earned her recognition far beyond her industry. She was invited to speak at global forums, where world leaders sought her insights on fostering innovation while maintaining ethical standards. Awards poured in, honoring her contributions to business, philanthropy, and social change. Yet none of these accolades held as much significance to her as the quiet satisfaction of knowing she had rebuilt her life with integrity and purpose. By the time the 5th anniversary of Charles's imprisonment arrived, Eleanor stood at the helm of an empire stronger and more sustainable than ever before. But what filled her with the greatest pride was the knowledge that she had turned tragedy into triumph, not just for herself, but for others whose lives she had touched along the way. She no longer defined herself by the betrayal that had nearly destroyed her. Instead, she saw it as a catalyst for growth, a chapter in a larger narrative of resilience and reinvention. And though the road ahead would undoubtedly present new challenges, Eleanor faced it with confidence, armed with the lessons of her past and an unshakable belief in her ability to shape her future. If this story of resilience, betrayal, and redemption resonated with you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more gripping tales that explore the depths of human emotion. Hit the notification bell so you never miss an update, and let us know in the comments, what part of Eleanor's journey moved you the most? Your support helps bring these powerful stories to life, and we can't wait to take you on many more adventures together. Thank you for joining us today on this emotional roller coaster. We hope it left you inspired, reflective, and eager for what's next. Until our paths cross again in another captivating story, take care, stay strong, and remember, even in the face of heartbreak, there's always a chance to rise stronger. See you again soon.